Horace Henshaw here from the Pacifica Historical Society and today's host of the show, Footprints of Pacifica. Every week we get together to explore and discover the lure and the allure of lovely Pacifica, its character and its characters. The focus of today's show is the continuing story of the Pacifica Tribune's 50 years of serving the community and its publisher, Bill Drake. Later on, we will visit the Tribune office and talk with several members of the current Tribune staff. But before we do that, we have the pleasure of talking with Carl Baldwin, the Pacifica's first city manager. Carl came to Pacifica in 1958 to assume the city manager role. At that time, our community had 2 publishing newspapers. Carl, thanks very much for being here with us. Perhaps you can share with us your memory of the 2 publishing newspapers in Pacifica at that time.
Well, right at the beginning, I believe there were 2 local papers operating within what is now Pacifica and doing a pretty good job of covering the city, the Coastside Tribune and the Sharp Park Breakers. The 2 papers were covering all of the city council meetings as well as board and commission meetings too, and doing a very creditable job. The city set up a press table at the city council meetings, and the reporters were always present and working to put their stories together for the next day in the publication of the respective papers.
Now you mentioned also that the outside newspapers came in too.
Outside papers from San Mateo County and occasionally from San Francisco, depending upon what was going on. And sometimes there were 3 or 4 people at the press table.
In 1959, Bill Drake arrived in town and purchased the Pacifica Tribune. How did the local residents take to this young man driving into town, taking over and writing sports about the new Pacifica, being that the city had just been incorporated?
Well, Bill came in rather unobtrusively, went right to work, and people realized that he was a thoroughgoing professional coming in to do a job with the Tribune, and it was a very smooth operation as he began his work in Pacifica. And very shortly, people sensed that here was a very competent and very able journalist who was also very fair in the way he was dealing with the city and with the events that were going on.
How do you think Bill will be remembered, and just what do you think Bill Drake meant to Pacifica?
Well, Bill was certainly part of the glue that held the city together over a long period of time. And I think he will be remembered as one of the most important people in the city's history. Bill was present at all the events. He was backed by his trusty little notebook on which he recorded everything that was going on. So you could be sure that whatever you said, Bill had it right in front of him, right in writing, and it was going to be accurately reported, and also that it was going to be fairly reported. So Bill, I believe, made a long-lasting contribution to our city that will not soon be set aside.
Oh my gosh. Well, Carl, it's been a pleasure having you here with us today. We're going to take a visit to the Pacifica Tribune office, where we have the pleasure of talking to several of our current staffs. But once again, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We're here at the Pacifica Tribune. The Tribune is located on Ora Vista. Actually, it's the same site as it was 50 years ago when Bill Drake owned the newspaper. Today is Wednesday, and today everybody is reading their weekly newspaper. The paper still publishes on the same day every Wednesday. Today, we're going to be visiting with the editor and publisher of the Pacifica Tribune. Her name is Elaine Larson. She's been here approximately 20 years. And she started out as a reporter here. So we're going to have really the pleasure of talking to her and finding out just exactly what's happening with the Pacifica Tribune today. Follow me in. Tell me a little bit about your background, where you came from,
Horace.
education.
Sure, Horace. Yeah, I was born in Palo Alto and raised, and also lived in San Jose, and I attended UC Berkeley and Northwestern, where I got my graduate degree.
And what happened after you left college? Where did you
Well, I worked for a little while at a flower shop, and I was looking for work, and I wanted to be in the Bay Area, which is why I came home. And my husband saw a little ad in the paper, which nowadays you don't see, any ads for reporters. He said, "Oh, Elaine, they're looking for a reporter in Pacifica." And I went, "Pacifica? Where's Pacifica?" Even though I was actually raised in the Bay Area, I had never heard of it. So I gave we called, and Dennis Hall was the editor at the time, and he said, "Oh, come on, can you come on Saturday?" This was a Friday. I said, "Sure, I'll come," and he hired me.
Now, was Bill Drake working here at that time?
Yes, Bill was publisher, but I didn't meet Bill till Monday. And the minute I met him, I knew he was the one that you wanted to please. I remember that he had his bow tie and his jacket, and he had his notebook, and he gave me a little tour of the building, and Bob Verdickberg was the police reporter at the time, and he drove me around town in his little Mustang and showed me the whole town, and he had been here 17 years. I started out as the police reporter and also education, and I was sort of daunted by that because Bob had been here 17 years and he knew everything. And I said, "Bob, I don't know if I can do this." I was just a young girl. I was 25, right out of school. And he said, "Oh, you can do it, you can do it." He was very encouraging, and so was Bill. I was City Hall reporter for many years and managing editor for a long time under Chris Hunter. I think I've written every story there is to write, except for sports. I knew you were going to say that.
What was Pacifica like when you arrived here? And what year was that?
This was 1987, actually March, so this is really my 22nd year. I remember Manor being very similar to now. Things haven't changed a lot up here, but I think it was more mom and pop places. There weren't the corporate Starbucks and Radio Shack. It was all Stan Farber's Pharmacy and just little places that you knew everybody by name.
What are some of the issues that you think Pacificans really are into nowadays?
Well, I think it's the same issues that they've always been into. The environment, protecting the environment. We have a whole new generations of people interested in doing that. Concern about taxes and the economy. I think very similar issues, really.
You look back over those 22 years, you must have had some favorite stories or favorite people that you covered. Can you highlight some of those?
Sure. Actually, I have to say that Police Beat's always been my favorite, and I still do it. And you just see all kinds of crazy stories on that beat. I remember a few years back, a woman had made a homemade bomb and tried to blow up her neighbor. She was obviously not well mentally, and she ended up blowing herself up, and that was a huge story.
And you cover everything from kitty cats getting hurt to
fires. Oh yeah. I even get the cat in the tree picture. But I think politics has been interesting. I covered Maury Point acquisition and the fights over that, and just endless groups getting together who are concerned, and we have a lot of acronyms of groups in town, like Friends of Pacifica.
Now, as your role as editor and publisher, what's the difference?
Well, I like to think of myself as an editor first. I'm very hands-on and dealing with the community, and I still try to write when I can. A publisher has more to do with dealing with our corporate bosses and trying to be liaison between what they would like us to do in terms of sales and our staff. So that I still do both, but I like to be editor first. When Bill had it sold it in '89, that was 2 years after I started, and he sold it to two businessmen who were out of state, and they owned it for about 2 years, I believe. Around the early '90s, A&G bought us, and they were the papers on the East Bay. The
A&G is?
Alameda Newspaper Group, but then they just refer to themselves as A&G, and that's East Bay. About 2 years ago, when I got promoted, they split us off from A&G, and now we're called Bay Area News Group, which is acronym BANG, and that is the entire peninsula from Contra Costa, ourselves, the San Mateo County Times, Daily News Group, San Mateo Times, or County Times, and Silicon Valley Newspaper.
Gone a long ways from those days at the printing presses here at the Tribune.
That's right, that's right.
Were you here, did you actually see the printing presses, or they were gone by the time you left?
I came right after that, but we had inserters, we had an insert crew, and we had a typesetter, we had paste-up people, where we put the stories down on a big flat, we pasted it with wax, and the little lines, and we took it to the printer physically. Now everything goes via internet.
Now, we just talked about your role as editor and publisher, but the real bulk of the operation comes on a Monday and Tuesday when you're trying to put the paper together. Walk us through your daily routine of that Monday and Tuesday.
Well, we try now with we have a new computer system, so we're really trying to get information early in the week, which for us starts basically on Wednesday. That would be the beginning of our week. And then we proceed through Thursday, Friday, gathering information, and then Monday is the day where we actually produce the pages on our computers. So they're very intense days. Pretty long hours, and then Tuesday the entire paper must be at our printer by about 2 o'clock in time for goes to pre-press and then to the printer. So it's very important that we get done on time on a Tuesday.
Under this new setup, you've almost had to up your deadlines for people submitting stories.
That's right.
How can the people help you?
Well, I think if they keep in mind that, come Monday I'm actually building the paper, so I really need to know what's going where. And if they don't leave things to the weekend, and obviously obituaries have to come in late, that sort of thing. But a lot of times I think people don't realize that there's a lot of turnover from when they submit something to when it's in the paper. So they need to think ahead and call me and work with me on deadlines, and just remember that helps the paper look good and make sure everything gets in time, and nobody gets disappointed because their event isn't publicized, and I hear about that.
But how large is your staff here at the Tribune?
Well, we have about 15 full and part-time people. That would be the core group. And then, of course, we have carriers, which are independent contractors. There's quite a few of them, and we really depend on them to get people the paper. It has shrunk a bit over the years, but I think we do quite a bit with our staff, and I have a great support from the community, as you all know. People often submit things, and we have correspondents, and we have columnists. We have Horace Hinshaw taking care of sports for us. And I have a lot of people who are very interested in submitting photographs, which I adore getting because I think it shows people's talent. And again, it makes it their Tribune. It's not just us, it's the whole paper, the whole communities. And I think that gives us a unique quality.
What's the future of Elaine Larson?
Well, I plan to stick around. I made Pacifica my home, and I love living by the ocean. And I just think Pacificans are kind of a unique group of people. They're pioneers by nature. We have a lot of newcomers who came here because they like the hills and the green and the ocean, and they bring their own kind of a brand of character. So I plan to stick around as long as we're able to keep in business, and I think we're doing okay.
Very good. We just need to be sure that you stay here for another 25 years.
Oh, well, I'll tell you a quick story. I never thought I'd be here this long, but I'm glad I did.
Elaine, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where I was fortunate enough to have a really good journalism class in my high school that I took my junior and senior year. And in my senior year, I had an internship at a daily paper there in Allentown, and I thought I wanted to go into journalism. So I went to Ohio University and studied journalism, and I loved studying journalism there, but I didn't like being all the way out at that school. I wanted a different sort of a school environment. So I transferred to Bennington College, where I got a BA in literature and history. But it wasn't journalism. So I had to go back to San Francisco State years later to catch up to bring my journalism skills up to date. And that's what I did. And then I pursued a job at the Pacifica Tribune.
So was this like your really first big newspaper job?
It is my only newspaper job, yeah.
Isn't that cool though? That's
yeah.
great.
I had worked as a paralegal before that. I had a different sort of career.
Now, who was the editor at the time that you came?
It was Chris Hunter. Yeah, Chris Hunter asked me they had just lost their education reporter, and Chris asked me to cover just the bond issue because the Pacifica School District had just passed a $30 million bond issue for facilities repair, and he wanted to make sure that he had a reporter to cover that, how that went through the board, and to make sure that the citizens who were supposed to have oversight over it would have oversight over it.
And so you stayed as an education reporter?
Yeah, I started with that. Yeah, I started doing that, just that one issue, and then just kept, one thing led to another, and it just kept mushrooming into more issues that the school board was discussing and more features that presented itself, and it just mushroomed from there. And it's been wonderful. It's been a dream come true for me. I really enjoy my job.
And the local news is key for you, isn't it?
It is. It is. I enjoy community reporting completely. I think it's important for things to be reported on a small town level because so many of the issues here would be overlooked at a bigger paper, but also because I think they're interesting. You know, I think what the kids do in the school, some of the features that have come out of what the kids learn in the school, jump rope for heart, or the disability awareness fair at Ocean Shore, and you know, and the aging awareness that they had at the middle school level. All of those have been, you know, important lessons for them, and have been good stories for us that I've enjoyed covering. I met Bill shortly after I started working at the Tribune, and he always treated me. He always called me a hungry reporter. So I always got a kick out of that, you know, because I knew I was in the right spot if Bill Drake was identifying me as a hungry reporter. But yeah, I always had a lot of respect for Bill. Even though he was not here working anymore, he generated respect, and if he ever made a suggestion, I followed up on it. He used to call me. One time he called me because the president of Ireland was visiting a home in Pacifica. I dropped everything to cover that just because Bill Drake told me to do it. No one else who was currently working at the Tribune told me to do it, but you know, of course he was right. Of course we had to cover that, and he knew exactly where she was, so I hid out in the kitchen to try, since I hadn't been invited to the dinner party. I hung out in the kitchen to get the story.
You didn't get the proper invitation.
No, I did not.
We're down here talking, we look around the Tribune, all the files and everything. Is there the future of community newspapers, in your opinion, still going to be here 25 years from now?
I hope so. I think so, in one way or the other. You know, because this really is a niche market, and an area where people can learn about the community that I just don't see where else they're gonna get it. I really hope so.
And will Jane Northup be here 25 years from now?
I don't know. That I don't know. I certainly hope so. I'm not going anywhere. We love it here in Pacifica. I'm very happy that we moved here.
Jane, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking with you
Thank
today.
you, Horace. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're here in the archives of the Pacifica Tribune, and these are all the old prints and negatives that go back as far as probably, I would think, probably 1955, 56. And this is really a good thing when we're talking about using pictures to update Pacifica, because there's pictures here of famous people, famous events, and hopefully that these pictures will stay for a long time. Unfortunately, some of the pictures have sort of like rotten, dried out over the years, and we can't use them. But for the most purpose, for the most recent years, the pictures are here. And today also, we also have the Tribune on CDs that we keep. So we have years of the Tribunes dating back to 2000 that we have on disc. So if you're looking for a story that was done in maybe 2004, we might be able to locate that for you. But these are all the archives here, as you see here. The negatives. These are all the old negatives. Now today we do digital camera, but as you can see, these are the negatives from years ago that we had to use. But today everything is done digital here at the Tribune, and it's just really much easier to work with.
Who's the person in charge of that these days?
Let's give credit to Elaine Larson and Bob Lloyd, because they're the ones that really do the processing and the development of the pictures to make them go onto the page. So let's give them a lot of credit for that.
And things would drop on the floor. So, and the machine is noisy. The typesetting equipment was very, you know. Now it's as quiet as can be.
We're here with Jackie Drake, longtime voice of the Pacifica Tribune. She retired several years ago, but she's here today to talk to us about her memories. Jackie, before we talk about the Tribune, perhaps you can tell us about how your travels brought you here to Pacifica.
It was a long time ago. I lived in Canada, and I'd been working for Arthur Murray's for about 8 years, and decided that I couldn't do that the rest of my life, and Houston was a big town making a lot of money. So I got on the train and came down and got off the train at San Francisco because my sister had just moved there, and stayed a week and stayed 2 weeks and stayed 3 weeks and decided to get a job because San Francisco was just like Vancouver, with the mountains in the background and the water. So I felt at home there, and I wanted to be with the new baby, and so I ended up staying there and getting several jobs, part-time jobs. And then I worked at a, when they first brought out where you could help the people that are spending too much money, you know, I can't remember their name. Anyhow, I got a chance to go to work with Charles Harney, and he was building the baseball stadium at the time. And I worked for the attorney in there that was in the upstairs part of the building. Charles Harney was way down in the industrial district, and we had a big lunchroom that we'd go to after the first group of people downstairs would have lunch. We'd have lunch upstairs. But I went with the attorney, and we traveled all around the San Francisco, the baseball area, and buying the houses and property to make the baseball park. And that was fascinating. And one thing led to another, and I ended up staying there about 4 years. And then I got pregnant and quit my job. And went home and stayed home for several years. And then when my daughter April was old enough to go to school, I got a job with a group of builders here in Pacifica, and worked for them for quite a few years. And then a notice came up about somebody wanted at the Tribune, and I came down here one Saturday afternoon, and the door was locked, and I tried to put my letter in the mailbox and couldn't get it in, and I banged on the door, and Paul Azevedo opened the door about 3 inches. And, you know, like I was going to shoot him or something. Anyhow, I gave him my letter, and they called me back, and Stu Strong talked to me, and they hired me, and I was here for about 1966 till 1992.
Now, was Bill in the office when you first showed up here?
No, he didn't see me till I came in another day. He didn't meet me, had nothing to do with hiring me. But the first big thing, I came here just about the time that the big ocean spill was, and we had that oil and everything. Well, this was a madhouse then, and I just was so excited about working here in a place like this. And so I just stayed.
What was your role? You had different roles over the years. What did you start out with, and how did it?
Well, I started out as the counter person and the phone person, and taking ads over the phone, and did that for quite some time. But my biggest job was proofreader, and finding the mistakes. And we had a man in the back shop that didn't hear well, and they would take the type that they had made on the printer and then hang it on a nail, and he would blow a horn, and I'd know that there was type back there for me to come and read, so I'd go back and get it.
So those were enjoyable years.
Oh yeah.
What are some of your real fond memories of the Tribune, or some people that really stood out to you as sort of maybe characters, if anything else?
Well, we all got along really well, and there was always special parties and birthdays, and Peggy Drake worked here for a while, and there was lots of late night hours. I remember one time that my husband was in the hospital, and I was coming home from the hospital. I guess it was about midnight. For some reason I was there so late, and so the lights were on, so I came in, and they were just putting the paper to bed, and I walked around the room, looked at the front page, and up here was a great big headline, "Garbage, so-and-so." And they didn't mean to put garbage. If I hadn't caught that, it would have gone up. That's the biggest mistake I ever found, but I found quite a few others. But I loved the proofreading part of it, and all these different people coming in the building, and Bill was a great boss, and we had good employees. Good employees. Everybody liked what they were doing, and that made the place go round the wheel right.
When you came, I guess, was Pat Lynn was the editor at that time?
No, he came after I got here.
Yeah.
And he could sit there and he'd pounding. He'd just pounded that typewriter, never knew what was going on around him. But Bill didn't train him, but he helped him a lot. And he was here for several years.
You know, when Bill sold the paper that year, almost 20 years ago, the entire city came out and did a party in celebration of his honor and remember him and thanking him for the community. It was a nice time. And over the years, it's been 20 years now, and I was just curious, what do you think his legacy means to this community now?
Well, I think he sort of got it on its feet a little bit. With the advertising and the good paper he put out, everybody enjoyed the paper. I just, because he's not seen around very much, I don't want it to be forgotten.
Every Wednesday, do you still pick up the Wednesday Tribune and reminisce at what it was years ago?
We pick up the Wednesday Tribune and nothing gets done till the Tribune's read. Except I didn't get it read today, and I gave it to him full, unfolded, and that amazed him a little bit because he usually gets it after I've had it. Yeah. And we enjoy reading it.
Well, Jackie, I want to thank you very much for being here and sharing some of your memories. It's always a pleasure working with Jackie. Even when she scolded me about the misspelling a name in paper, it seemed that she knew every person in town and always knew how their names were spelled correctly over the years of being a proofreader. So, Jackie, thank you very much.
Okay. I'd like to come back, but I'm too old.
We've had the pleasure of talking about the Pacifica Tribune and exploring the last 50 years of the Tribune under the leadership of Bill Drake. We've had the pleasure of talking with many of the reporters and editors and advertising people who worked at the Tribune. The Shirley Trappides, the Barbara Pagans, the Tom Johnsons, the Pat Lynn, the pioneers of the Tribune in the Bill Drake era, the Pat Sanjaminos, the Sue Strongs, the Rap Barkleys, and forever thinking about the back shop people who put it all together for those many years. To those people, we'll be forever grateful putting the Tribune on the map and putting Pacifica on the map as well. To those people, we say thank you, and we thank everybody for reading the Tribune every Wednesday when it comes out. This is Horace Henshaw speaking for the Footprints of Pacifica, wishing you a good evening.